Hilchas Gzailah V'Aveidah Perek Arbaser. Now, the pasuk in Parshas Kiseise, when the pasuk of Hashavas Aveidah, it starts off in Kapitel Chav Beis, pasuk Aleph, Lisira Esher Ochicha Oyesei Nidachim V'Salam Temeam Hashev Teshivim Leochicha. So the pasuk is speaking about Asher and Aseh. Then the pasuk, next pasuk, V'Mleikarev Ochicha Elecha V'Leyedaite, is Vasaftal Tech Bisecha Adresh Ochicha Esei, and then Vashivei Sile. But then in pasuk Gimel, after already in pasuk Aleph we mentioned Sher and Seh, then the pasuk Gimel says V'chein Tasel L'Chamerei, V'chein Tasel L'Simlosei, V'chein Tasel L'Chol Avedas Achicha Asher Tev Menu Mitzosel L'Sucha L'Salam. So the Torah mentions Beprotius Sher and Seh, it mentions Beprotius Chamer and Simla, and then it mentions L'Chol Avedas Achicha. Now once it mentions L'Chol Avedas Achicha, which is including everything, so L'Chura, the Protim of Sher, Seh, and Chamer and Simla, L'Chura, not necessary. That's what the Rambam tells us, the drasha from this pasuk. Perek Arbasa. Hasimla bechlal kol avedas achicha. Be'emes hasimla is already included in the words kol avedas achicha. Bechlal kol avedas achicha isa. V'chein, hasher, v'aseh, v'chamer. There's all four things that the Torah is mefaret are really included in kol avedas achicha. V'lam et parat hakosav chamer. That's the purpose of his lachzirei b'simonim ardas. That a chamer you also return with simonim ardas. Aval b'isha siman b'davar atofulei is also yavzeh. So even though it's mardas, it's not the chamer itself. If you know what the chiddush is that you should have known the simoni chamer, or the chiddush is that you return the chamer with the simoni mardas. But I'll call upon him, the lashon is that even though the simon is b'davar atofulei, it's not in the actual behem itself, but nevertheless the simon on the mardas is enough to get the chamer back. That's b'negei mardas. That's b'negei chamer. V'lam aparat sher v'seh, which is lahachzir afilu gizas haseh, or gaze znav sher. In other words, even the shearings of the seh, or the gaze of the tail of the ox, is afal pishu davar mu'at, even though it's talking about a davar mu'at. So in other words, them is there's two chidushim here. B'negei gizas haseh, even if it's not a davar mu'at, but there's a svara, since you're taking care of it, so maybe you should be entitled to gizas haseh. And b'negei gaze nav asher could be that it's even a davar mu'at, it's even less than a shava pruta. And b'chlal, for less than a shava pruta, you don't have to be machzer. But over here, since this less than a shava pruta is coming from something that is a shava pruta, so there's a general chiyuv lachzara of the share. So that includes also the gaze of the snav share. But I'll call upon him from the fact that the Torah mentions share v'seh, it teaches us that you're machzer, the gizas haseh, which even though the pale, you're sharing it and you're involved in taking care of it, but you're not entitled to it. And al derezeh, the gaze is nav share, even though it's a davar mu'at. So that explains why we have chamer to teach us about the mardas hachamer, and the share and the seh to teach us about gizas haseh, and the gaze is nav share. And v'lam aparat simla. Why does the Torah mention simla? Lul midmimena, that simla is an example of something which has to be returned. Ma simla miyuchedes. Sheyesh la simonim. There's usually a simla has certain features which are specific, which the Bailim know about. There's certain simonim on the simla. And the cheskasa sheyesh la tevim. And as a result of the simonim, the Bailim feels a confidence that he'll be able to give the simonim and be able to get back the item. And therefore, v'chayv lahasa. So now we're talking about something that has simonim. And as a result of that, so there's yesh la tevim. And therefore, is chayv lahasa. Is av kol davar sheyesh beit simonim. Everything that has simonim is areu becheska sheyesh la tevim. We could assume that there's someone looking for it, that the person was miyayish, and therefore v'chayv lahasa. Aval davar she'en la tevim. El nisyayishim imenu ha'bailim, something which the bailim were misyayish from, is hareu shemetzi. It belongs to the person that finds it. Afal pi sheyesh b'simonim. So davar, something that has no tevim is nisyayishim imenu ha'bailim, even though lepel it has simonim. Simonim is only a reason that the bailim shouldn't be nisyayish. It's not a reason that you have to return it. It's only a reason that the bailim weren't nisyayish, and therefore you have to return it. Masha'inkin, if you have a davar she'en letevim, even a lepel that has simonim, you have to be sheyesh b'simonim, so the din is you don't have to return it. The kudus is that something that has simonim, we assume that it's yesh letevim, and something that has tevim, and something that doesn't have simonim, we assume that ein letevim. But on the other hand, the Rambam teaches clearly that if it's something that ain't litevim, even if it has simonim, so also you don't have to return it. Zeh halacha bei, zeh klal b'aveidah. Kol davar she'ein bei siman, if it doesn't have a siman, is kivin she'avad, once it's lost, and v'yodu b'habaylim she'avad, and the baylim are aware that it's lost, like we learned the Hemshech, that the Rambam paskin the yir shlei midas le'avi yish, the halach is like Abaya, that yir shlei midas le'avi yish, so it has to be avad, he has to lose it, and v'yodu b'habaylim she'avad, and he's aware that he lost it, so then it's areza, and since it has no siman, is areza b'cheska sh'nisyaisha baylim imanu. So we could assume that the Bailam was Messiahish. Came Masmer Echad, he lost one nail, a Machadachas, or one needle, a Matbeah. Shari Einan Yechel Litan Similar Ziralem, Leficha Chareo Lezeshematze. Since they were Miyahish, we could assume that they were Miyahish. So therefore, the person that finds it keeps it. However, V'choldavar Sheyesh Bi Siman, something has a siman, Kegin Simla Ubehema, which normally has a siman, is Areza Becheska Shalenis Yashu Mimenu Bailam. We could assume that the Bailam weren't Miyash. Aridaitan Pluya Litan Simonim Sheyesh B'Yaslam. In their mind, they still have the hope that they'll give the Simonim and they will be returned. Leficha Chametze, since they weren't Miyash, so Leficha Chametze Chayiv Lahachris, the person that finds it is Mechuyev Lahachris to return it. Elim Kain Yodash Nisyash Avayla. If he knows for a fact that we're dealing with an item that really has a sim, and the pashtus hadvarim would be that it doesn't, that there's no yush. But if you know for a fact that there was a yush, they clearly verbalize that they feel they lost the money. In other words, it's far found. So then it's so if it has a simon, we assume he wasn't miyayish. If it doesn't have a simon, we assume he was miyayish. But even if it had a simon, and you know for a fact it was miyayish, so memela harei shometzim. V'chein, the same idea in Motzah Dover, sheyesh bi simon bayam u'kenor u'kiyetzibam. Because he found it in a place where even when it has a simon, we could assume he was miyayish, like we learned before, b'zut shalyam b'shalus shel nor, b'mokim sherubi goyim, and memela, even if it has a simon, so he assumes that Mistama Goy found it, and memela he's not going to really be able to give a simon. He's not going to be able to get it back. So therefore, as soon as it fell and he knew about it, we assumed that he was nisyayish. Therefore, it's shalmeitzon. We don't know for a fact. We never heard that he was nisyayish, but we could assume that he was nisyayish. In other words, the fact that it's rubi goyim and the Rav says it's mistama goy, that's not enough vaistuis in order to say that it belongs to a goy. Or is to say, I found an item, I don't know who it is, so but pashtus, it's a goy, so I don't have to return the item, because a goy's item you don't have to return. Vaistai, since there's a possibility that it's a yid, and the principle of ein heilchem b'mam and acher hareiv, so therefore be'etzim you'd have to return it. The only reason why you don't have to return it, that's the pashtus hamashmois, the only reason you don't have to return it is because even if it's a yid, we could assume that it was miyayish, because since it's reiv goyim, so he assumes the guy is going to find it, and therefore he's not going to return it. Now, halacha hey, yiyush shalei midas, afilu b'davar she'ein b'siman ein yiyush. In other words, even if it's something that's normal, he should be miyayish, because it's a davar she'ein b'siman, and the pashtus is that he's going to be miyayish. Abulapel, since he's not aware that he lost it, so it doesn't have a din of yiyush. Ketzad, nafal mimenu dinner. A dinner fell from him. Abulei yada b'shenafal, he wasn't aware that it fell. Is afal pik sheyeda b'shenafal is yisyayish. When he'll find out that he lost it, he'll be Messiahish because it has no simon. Like we said before, that if a person loses a matbeya, so we assume that he was Miyahish. But hareze ene yushato lepel. Right now there was no yush. Until they're aware that they lost the item, and therefore at this point in time there was no yush. Let's say we know the Bailam knows he doesn't have it, but lepel the Bailam aren't sure why don't I have it? Don't I have it because it fell out of my pocket? Memela, so it's lost, so there's yush. Or maybe I misplaced it. Maybe I gave it to this person, I don't remember. Shema Nasatavu Plani, or maybe Bimigdalu Monach, or maybe I placed it there. Ishema Teisi Becheshman, I made a mistake in Cheshman, and therefore it is here. So in other words, he's not really sure he lost it. In other words, when do we say that it's considered yush? Is when he's sure he lost it, and he's not expecting to find it back. So in other words, he lost it, and it's something that has no simon, so then that's called yush. Masha'inkin, if he's not really sure he lost it, it's possible that it's somewhere here or somewhere there. Or maybe I really still have it, I just made a mistake in the cheshbon of something. So in all these things, so yush means he's aware that he lost it, and he gives up hope of ever finding it. That's called Yush. At that point in time, whoever finds it is able to take it. Masha'enkin, before Yush, then you cannot take it, even though you know that when this person will find out about it, he'll be Messiahish. Halacha Vov. Harei Chaverei shenafel mimenu din al haaretz v'lei yadabe. He sees someone that he lost a dinner, and he wasn't aware of it. And lepeil v'notel had dinner kedem yush. So he went and took this dinner, and it was before Yush. So in other words, this person taka, when he'll find out, he'll be miyayish. But at this point, he wasn't miyayish. So Memela, since he wasn't miyayish, you're not allowed to really take it. Now the din is normally, let's just maybe magdim. The din is normally that when you find something and it was before Yush, you have to return it. And even though later on this person was miyayish, but nevertheless the Yush, which happens after you found it, is not going to permit you to keep it. The Yush that person had after you found it is not going to permit you to keep it. Now the question is why. So the Pashtus Advarim would be l'chura, because since you have already a Chiyuv Hashava, so Mela, once you have a Chiyuv Hashava, so the fact that he was miyayish is not going to help you. But Vaistu is also brought down, the Alter Rebbe says it also in Shulchan Aruch, that the Vaistu is that the Rambam learns that the Havanas Advarim is not because since there was a Chiyuv Hashava, therefore the Yush is not going to help you. Alder by a Gazlan, let's say, that there was a Chiyuv Hashava, and Mela the Yush is not going to help for the Gazlan. The Pshat is that since you picked it up, and you have a Chiyuv to return it to him, you become a shamer for him. At that point in time, you become a shamer for him. And since you become a shamer for him, so this item is really in your possession for him. Now, if a person was miyayish on an item which finds itself in his house, so even though he was miyayish, the yish doesn't do anything. The only time yish does something if it finds itself in a place where it's not his. Masha'enkin, if it finds itself in a place which is his, so yish wouldn't help. So over here, since the person picked up this mitzvah, almanas lachzirei, so at this point in time, he becomes like a shamer for the person that lost the Aveidah. Once he becomes a shamer for the person that lost the Aveidah, so now when the person that lost the Aveidah is Messiahish, he's like being Messiahish on an item which finds itself in a Rishus, it finds itself in someone's possession which is holding it on his behalf, even though he's not aware that that person is holding it on his behalf. That's the Havana of why years doesn't help. Now, Memela, when does that talking about? When a person picked up the Aveidah, Almanas to return it. So he became a shamer for that person, and now that person was miyayish, he was miyayish while this item was in his rishus. But if a person picks up an item that somebody lost, Almanas ligzel, a person picks up an item, Almanas ligzel, so at that point in time, he doesn't become a shamer for this person. So Memela, now when that person is going to go ahead and be Messiahish, so Memela, he lost an Aveidah, and Lepel, now he was Messiahish, so now it becomes the person that picked it up. He has a Chiyuv Hashavas Gzailah. So a normal person, when he steals something, so he has a Chiyuv Hashavas Gzailah. So even if the Nigzal was Messiahish, he still retains that Chiyuv of Hashavas Gzailah. Because someone steals something from someone, and then that person was Messiahish. So the fact that person was Messiahish doesn't take away the Chiyuv of Hashavas Gzailah. Why? Because you have no right to keep it. I mean, you have a Chiyuv to return it. And the fact that it was Messiahish is not going to change anything. But this item, Ein Chinami, you became a Gazlan on it, so L'chura, there's a Chiyuv of Hashavas Gzailah. But besides the fact that you became a Gazlan, it was also an Aveidah. And since it was an Aveidah, so the din is on an Aveidah Yush helps. On an Aveidah Yush helps. But the reason why Aveidah doesn't help Yush after you pick it up is because Lepel, this item was Bershuscha. Masha'enkin, if you picked it up Almanas Ligzel, so the picking up Almanas Ligzel is going to permit that the Yush als Hilchis Aveidah is going to work after you picked it up. That says the din of Yush after you pick it up could help als din Aveidah because you didn't pick it up for him. Masha'enkin als din's Gzailah, if there was only a Gzailah and there was no Aveidah, so then Yush after you gazeled it is not going to help you. That's the Havanas Advarim. Let's read inside. Allah Chavav. Harei Chaverei shenafel mimenu dinar alaretz. He sees a dinner fell from someone on the floor, and v'lei yodabei. So Memela, at this point in time, he's not allowed to take it. It's an Aveidah which he's not allowed to take. Now v'notel adinner kedem yish. He went ahead and picked up this dinner kedem yish, and he picked it up almanas to keep it. The Rambam doesn't say clearly, but that's the pshat. He picked it up almanas to keep it. We see clearly. is first of all, Ever Asay, is Ever on the S of Hashiv Teshive, and also Val Shnei Lavim, on the two Lavim, L'Sucha L'Salim, and L'Sigzal, Kemesha B'Yarnu. So at that point in time, that's partial. We learned this before. Now the Rambam adds, Vafilu Hirzele Hadino L'Achash Nisyayish. If let's say this person then, the original person that lost the Aveda was Misyayish. So the din is Matonizu. So at this point in time, he is Zoich in this Aveda. That's the Chiddush over here. When a person picks up someone's Aveda before Yush, so and he picks it up. So if he picks it up, Al Manas Lahachzir, so Mameli he becomes a Shemer. So that person's Yush of later means nothing. Masha'enga, when a person picks it up, Al Manas Ligzel, so that person's Yush is meaningful. But he's a Gazlan, so anyways he has a Chiv of a Heshav Zagzela. The answer is no. A regular Gazlan, Taka, the years doesn't help because he only has a Chiv Heshav Zagzela, and there's no Din Aveda over here. Masha'enkin over here, there's the Chan Aveda as well. So Mitzad Hilchas Aveda, once there's a Yush, the Yush becomes the person that bought it. It's just that if I'm not the person that picked it up, but if the person that picked it up, I'm a nas of the person that lost it, so the years doesn't help because it's still B'Shusei. But over here, since he picked it up, not Almanas to return it, so Memela, the year Shal Tzaveda helps. The year Shal Tzaveda helps. And even though L'chura is a Chiv Hashav Al Gzailah, but Lepel, he was Kainet. He was Kainet Mitzad the Din, that year helps by Aveda. So the Chiv Hashav of Gzailah, normally when there's no Din of Aveda, so the Chiv Hashav of Gzailah forces you to return it. And you have a mitzvah to return it even after Yush. Masha'enkin over here, since it was not only a Gzailah, but it was the Chnaveda, so in Mela, the Yush after the Aveda helps because Lepel is not B'Shusei. So Mela, you're Kainet. So the Nukudas Advarim is that when a person picks up an item, and the item he picks up, Koidem Yush, it was a lost item, and he picked it up Koidem Yush, and he picked it up Amanas to keep it. So he was over on the three, on the Esa, on the two Lavim. And now when that person is Misyayish, the Chiddush over here is that Yush works. Even though normally a Yush after you pick up an Aveda doesn't work. And normally Yush after you steal a Gzailah doesn't work. And you always have a Chiyav Hashava. But over here, when you have something that was a lost item and you picked it up, Al Manas L'Goizloi, so now the Yush does work. And the Yush works that it becomes yours because it's an Aveda that was Yush, and it's not a Yush B'Shusei because you took it not Al Manas L'Achzirei. So it becomes yours. Now when you're going to take this item and return it, that item that you're going to return is a matana ilay. Ukvar over ali yisurim. He was already evan the yisurim, and he brings over there. The Ramar brings that be'emes he doesn't even have a chiv to return it. He really doesn't even have a chiv to return it because even though mashal a gazla, if the item is no longer be'en, he has to return the guf of the item. But over here, since he was koina the guf of the item, here he was koina the guf of the item, mihilchas aveda that it was yush. So when he be'emes has to return the guf of the item, he just doesn't have it. So now he has to return it back he has to return the money. But over here that he was koinet mihilchas yush because it was an aveda in yush, is vice that there's no chiyuv even of Heshav Zagzela. There's no chiyuv of Heshav Zagzela. So b'chiyai gavna l'chure he should that's what I'm saying. I feel here's the adin alachish yush matani izu kvar over al yisurim. He was over al the yisurim. When he picked it up, Almanas L'Goizloi. When he picked it up, Almanas L'Goizloi. At this point in time, if a person steals his Goizel, and his Goizel Ba'ifim Kazeh, at this point in time, when his Goizel Ba'emes, there was a Chiyav Hashava. There was, I'm thinking like when he's Goizel, so L'Chura, there should be a Chiyav Malchus, because he's not going to have a Chiyav Hashava. There's no Hashava. But the Emes is when he picked it up, he did have a Chiyav Hashava, because there was no Yush yet. At that point in time, there was a Chiyav Hashava. When does it become Uis Chiyav Hashava? Later when there's no Yush, at that point in time there's no Maisa. So Mela there's no Chiyav Malchus as well. But I'll call upon him, it's a Dover Mechudish. Be'emes it's a big dion al zeh, and the Achreinim, when they get Pshat in this Rambam. But they're saying again Pshat in the Rambam, a Chidush is this. The Rambam's Chidush. That the Rambam saying Azay, that when a person picks up an Aveda, before Yush he has to return it, and Yush is not going to help. If a person steals an item, and then there was Yush, she still has to return it because the Yush is not Kana. Yush is not Kana. If a person lost an item and then the person went ahead and picked it up before Yush, he picked it up before Yush, Amanas L'Goizloi. So then the din is that later on, when there's Yush, he's Kana. Then later on, when there's Yush, he's Kana. In other words, when it was Sai Gzailah and there was an Aveda, he was Goizel, something which was an Aveda. So then, when the person's Yush, he's Kana. And even when he returns it, it's Bechinas Matana. Here's the Le'adin Alachish Nisyayish Matana Yizu, Kvar over Al Yisur. Allah Chazayin. Not al dinner lifnei yish al manas lachziri. Now, he took the dinner lifnei yish, it wasn't al manas to keep it. He took it al manas lachziri. So he became at that point in time a shomer for the person that lost the Aveidah. Now, ula'acher yish nischaven ligzilei. So then he decided that he wants to keep it. So now his over mishum hasher teshivim, because when he picked it up, he wasn't evan lisigzil, and he also wasn't he didn't pick it up. He wasn't evan lesuchal lisalim, because he picked it up al manas lachziri. Lepel, right now, he went ahead and decided not to return it. So Lepel, he wasn't Mekayim the mitzvah of Asher Teshivim. He was Eva Mishum Asher Teshivim. But he's not Oivan L'Sigzil because there was no Maisa. No, it's in his possession. Be'emes, he has a chiv to return it, but Lepel is not returning it. To say that he was Oivan L'Sigzil could only be when you take it, Almanas Ligzil, that's when you're Oivan L'Sigzil. But over here, that he never took it, Almanas Ligzil, so he's not Oivan L'Sigzil. Now, there is he's not Oivan on L'Suchel L'Sal. That's din number 2. Now the Rambam says, him to law. Because he saw this person lose. So we have this case, this is the same case. Someone lost a dinner, and he sees the person losing a dinner. So the first case was he picked it up on Manas Legezli. He picked it up on Manas to keep it. The second case was he picked it up Lifnei Yosh on Manas Lachzire. But Lepel, he wasn't Mazerit. So then the din is that he's Evan Hashav Teshivim. Now, him to law, V'lehi Dir Lebailim. He didn't do anything. He looked at it, and he didn't tell the Bailam that they lost it, and dinner, and he didn't take the dinner until they realized that they lost it. And then Shari Nisyayishuk, at that he didn't want to touch it before Yush, because he knows if he touches it before Yush, he has to return it. And he didn't want to take it Shalei Alman. So he just left it. But now he's picking it up after Yush. Shari Nisyayish Rabbaim, K'mei B'Yanu, V'achar kach not l'adinu me'aloretz, so eina ever el mishum l'suchal l'salim. He has no chiyuv of Hashiv Teshivim. Why? Because at this point in time, there was, it became Yush. In other words, at this point in time, there's a Yush, so there's no chiyuv of Hashiv Teshivim. And vice is the fact that he's postponing, that's what we mentioned before, the fact that you're postponing the Hashiv Teshivim, whereas he had a mitzvah of Hashiv Teshivim. Now he doesn't have that mitzvah already, because there was Yush. The fact that he postponed doing the mitzvah of Hashem Teshivim and he never ended up doing it is not over. But on the other end, the fact that he postponed going ahead and returning the Aveidah, that he was over. So he was over on L'Suchal L'Salim. The fact that he didn't go right ahead, and pick up the Aveidah, Amunas L'Tlach is over on L'Suchal L'Salim. But on the other end, the mitzvah of Hashem Teshivim is only over if he doesn't end up returning it, something which he should return. And over here, originally he should have returned it, but now there's no longer a chiyuv to return it. And he's certainly not Evan L'Sigzil, because he was never Gezel. He waited until there was Yush, and only then did he pick it up. Halacha Ches. Ro Selei Matbeya, Shenofel Afilu Mishleish B'nei Adam. He sees a Selei Matbeya that fell out of 3 people. Now, vice if it falls out of 2 people, so the person is not Miyayish, because he figures, I'll ask the other person, that person will have to give it back to me. Masha'inkin, if he falls out of 3 people, so the Churad is over here is a Svara that I was Miyayish, because he figures, in other words, I'm going to ask one person, he's going to say, no, I didn't find it. Maybe the other person found it. So Memela, so there's more of a svara to be miyayish. But on the other end, if they're shutfim, if they're bamish shutfim, so then there's no svara such a svara to be miyayish, because then he figures that he'll be able to find it. But the problem is, if they're shutfim, so l'chura, we have to figure out how much is there in each item, because l'chura there's a chiyav hashava, and if there's no shava pruta, l'chol echad v'yechad, so there's also no chiyav hashava, because in l'pel there's no Chiyav Hashava, because there's no Shava Pruta L'chol Echad. But on the other end, could be they were Shutfim, L'chatchila in this item, and now one of the Shutfim gave the other Shutf enough that he should have a Shava Pruta in this item. So it's a little bit hard for me to understand the exact tzir, but that's l'chura what's going on in Nachamo. Ros Seli Madbesh Nafal Afilu Mishleishim Li'adam. He sees a seller falling out of 3 people. The Afal Pi She'im B'Shava Pruta L'chol Echad V'Echad. And even though Lepel, this seller, doesn't have enough for that there should be a Shava Pruta L'chol Echad V'Echad. So there's like it fell out of 3 people, so l'chura there's a svara that he was miyayish, and now the tzad is that there's shutfim, but then there's no Shava Pruta L'chol Echad V'Echad, is nevertheless chayav li'achzer. Why? Because Shem is shutfim. First of all, maybe there's shutfim, and as a result of that, he wasn't miyayish. Now, but l'chura, if the Einochinami, the shutfim, but there's no Shava Pruta L'chol Echad V'Echad, so we have to have 2 shemas. First of all, Shem is shutfim, and also mochel echad bem chelki l'chaveda, and one of them was mechel his chelik l'chaveda. V'nim tzavidasi shel zeh shava pruta. So mainly you have a chiyav hashava. So Kitzur, if you see something falling out of three people, so there would be a svara that they were miyash, because Lepel he lost it, and there's three people there. So Memele he was miyash. If there's two people, he won't be miyash. But if there's three people, he'll be miyash. So we say no. That there's a svara that they weren't miyash because maybe the shutf, I have the shutfim, so maybe there's no shava pruta l'cholechad. In other words, let's say in a scenario that if there's shutfim, there's no shava pruta l'cholechad. So you have to add nocha maybe. In other words, maybe there's shutfim, and maybe the one of the shutfim gave to the other one his chelik, so maybe there is a shava pruta l'cholechad. So the fact that they were originally shutfim makes it that he's not miyash. And the fact that Lepeli gave it over, so it's a shava pruta to one of the people. So maybe that's why you have to return. That's l'chura the pshat in halacha ches. Halacha tes. Roach haveri shenafel mimenu dinner b'techa chel b'techa offer. He fell like on the side of the sea. There's sand. There's a lot of sand, and it fell at dinner b'techa chol b'techa offer. And when it's ala mimenu, he doesn't really know where it is. So the din is hareze k'nefa liyam l'nor. It's as if it fell into the river or into the sea. V'hareu shel meitzi. If whoever finds it, even if that person is still looking for it, it belongs to whoever finds it. Why? Shari Nisayishman, he definitely was Nisayish, Mepnei Shein B'Simen. Ba'fila Rois, he may be Kvara L'chapes Acher, he brings a sieve in order to going through the sand to be able to find this coin. Is B'das Ru'uim Mechapes. He's doing something, he's not doing something with which is irrational. There are people that come to the sea and they start going through the sand, not because there's really something to look for. Because there's certain people that look for things even though the likeliness of them finding it is very, very far. So over here also he's going looking through the sand, not because he's really expecting to find that matbeh that he lost. But maybe he's going to find something else. So in other words, be'etzem he was taking nisyayish. The Rambam is saying the be'etzem he was nisyayish because lepel the likeliness of him finding it is very, very remote. But on the other hand, I is looking for it. You say he's looking for it. He's looking for it. People go and look for things even when they don't lose anything. So looking for things. So he's also looking for it, but he's not really looking for it with the idea that really I hope I still am going to find it, because lepel is not expecting to find it. Halacha Yud. Hamoitzi sela bashuk. Person finds a sela bashuk. Matzi chaveri v'amar lei. Shali, because v'chadoshi, I'll give you simon, it was a new sela, and v'shal medina plainis here was from this particular type of coin. And v'shal melech plainis here was from this king. Afilo amar shmi kosvala, I wrote my name on this coin. Lei amar klum. Ve'eni chayiv lahachzer. She'ein simoni amadbei simon. A simon that you give on the coin is not a simon. Mipnei shecheskosi leitzo. What does the simon mean? It was mine. So I'm saying, yes, taka yours. It was yours, but lav dafka that was yours when you lost it, because the chaskasi is that you spend it, and memela. So therefore, this simon is not a real simon. So maybe it was taka once yours. So therefore, this is not really a proper simon. The hail, the any simon, shesem chanolov is mishas nefila nisyoish varei shel metzah. So in other words, the question is, why aren't we giving it back to him? Are we giving back to him because we don't believe what he's saying, and we're believing that maybe he had such a coin and he gave it away? From the Rambam finishes, that's what it sounds like from the beginning. From the beginning it sounds, he's coming and he says, I lost a new coin, it was from this and this, Medina v'chula v'chula. So l'chura, you could taina, maybe there was someone else that lost also a similar coin, and in other words, it's not a simon muvik. So the Rambam is saying not like that. The Rambam is saying is maybe Hitaka lost such a coin, but Lepel, since this is not a real simon, because there's always a possibility that he gave it to someone else, and that person lost it, so it's not really a simon that you're the one that got it. So therefore, you understand that we can't really rely that it's yours based on the simon, and therefore you're Messiah. That's what it sounds like from the Rambam. So again, he's giving all these simonim, so the din is Eini Chayiv Lahazer. Why? She'ein simoni amadbeya simon. Why? Mipnei shecheskosi leitzah, because bepasu the matbeya is there to be used. And v'anu emrim shalei hoisa v'hitzia miyadei v'nofel miyadacher. It's possible that Taka he owned this coin. These simonim are showing that he owned this coin because he has his name on it. But on the other end, that doesn't mean that the coin is his. The hail the any simon shesem chololov, and since it's not a simon that we really rely on, so who's shesem chololov that we rely on to accept this simon is Mishas Nefil in the Siyayish, Varei Shal Meitzah. It's like, L'chura, you have to understand, L'chura, if we will rely on it, because we'll believe him that he didn't give it out, so then he won't be Messiahish. I mean, the Rambam is like, it doesn't say clearly, it doesn't say clearly that, why do we assume that he was Messiahish? He was Messiahish because we don't accept this simon, so Mamela he was Messiahish. Why don't we accept the simon? Because it's possible that it's Lehitzon. I'm saying it's like, you have to understand, where does it start? The maskana is that if a person loses a coin, even though he has a simon on the coin, and he wrote his name on the coin, but nevertheless we say that taka maybe it was his, but lepel he could have used the coin to give it to someone else. So therefore, the fact that he's writing his name is not really a raya that it's his, and since it's not really a raya that it's his, so therefore we assume that when he lost it, he was messiahish, and therefore we don't give it back to him when he comes along and gives this simon. Halacha Yudalef. Hameitzi davar she'ein b'simen, b'tzad davar she'yesh b'simen, chayav lahachris, and that's pashtus when we assume that they're connected, like you have peiros that are sticking, fell out of a keli, so the peiros have no simon, but the keli has a simon, and the pashtus advarim that it fell together. Now, bo bala simon v'notel shalei, someone comes along and says, this keli is mine, and he has the simon, he says, the peiros weren't mine, v'amar shezeh bilvad nafel mimenu, only the keli fell from me, and not the other thing which doesn't have a simon, so then it's zochar meitzah b'davar she'ein b'simen. Now we realize that it's not something this thing fell separately and it has no simon, so therefore the bailim will miyayish. Halacha Yud Beis. Hamoitzi kli cheres ukiyetze ben mikelim shetzuras kulam shavi. He found a keli which is a regular standard keli. Now im kelim chadoshim, it's a new keli, is hareim shalei, he could keep the keli. Sharehem k'mei dinim shara dinim she'en li simon. It's a regular, just like a regular coin. So the bailim doesn't recognize the coin, which coin you had. It's a regular, something that had no simon. So the same thing over here, this keli has no simon. He sees a jar, he doesn't know if this was his or someone else's. That's talking about if it's a new keli. However, there's a keli which he saw a lot of times. It's not a new keli, it's something which his eye became satiated with. In other words, he's seen it many times. So therefore, even though he may not have a particular simon, but he could tell, which is called the tviya sign, he could tell that this keli is his, he recognized it, he can't say anything particular, any particular details about it. But just the look of the keli, he could recognize it's his. It's like maybe this type of scratches or whatever, little things which he can't really even describe. So then it's chayiv lahachris. Then this person is mechuyev to be machris this keli. Whereas we're talking about a keli, which is a standard keli, but it's not a new keli, it's a keli shesavosim ayin. Why? Because she'im yavi talmud chacham, if someone that's a talmud chacham, which we'll soon see what a talmud chacham means, someone that's believed, and v'yemer will say aval pi she'eni yochalitin b'keli simon. I don't really have any particular simon about this keli. But yeshli b'tviya sayin, I recognize that this keli is mine. And notice he doesn't really have it. We have no real reason to believe him. But on the other hand, he's a person that's a Talmud Chacham, and therefore he's a Neman. So then it's chayiv laharisle. You have to show him the keli. So normally, when a person comes along and says, "I have a simon," if the person's saying a right simon, then you give him the keli. You don't show him the keli. Fakert. You don't show him the keli, and he has to come along and give a simon. This person, we're talking about over here a keli that has no simon. So he's coming along and he's saying, "I have no simon," but on the other end, if it's mine, I'll recognize it. So if he's a Talmud Chacham, you have to show it to him, and if he claims that it's his, that he recognizes it, so then you have to return it to him. Now, Bamedvar Halacha Yud Gimel, Bamedvar Mamurim, when do you have to return it to him? When he claims he recognizes it. But Talmud Vasik She'ein Mishanim B'Diburi Klal. If he's a Talmud Vasik that never says something which is not true. Ela B'Divri Shalom, only when we're dealing with things which are negate to Divri Shalom, the Ram Mutai choice. Ebe Mesechta, Ebe Mita, Ebe Bayeshu Mesarach. So these four things, B'Divri Shalom, Ebe Mesechta, Ebe Mita, Ebe Bayeshu Mesarach, then he is Mishana B'Diburi. This is the only time this person would Mishana B'Diburi. So then we say that he's Naman to say that he recognizes the B'Tvias Ayin. Kesat. Now he's giving you the examples of where this person, which is Naman B'Tvias Ayin, would sometimes be Mishana B'Diburi, but nevertheless, the fact that he's Mishana B'Diburi in these things doesn't disqualify him from being Naman B'Tvias Ayin. Kesat. Hoya Esig B'Mesechta Nida. And the reason why he says that is Kadeshi Yeshalu Shailas bin Yanida. He doesn't want people to ask him Shailas and Ilchas Nida. Maybe he doesn't know enough the answers. But Al Kolban, he's not interested in people asking him the Shailas. So therefore, he changes of what he's really learning. He's really learning Nida, and he's saying he's learning Mikvois. That would be one thing, that the fact that he was Mishana B'Diburi doesn't make him not Naman B'Tfiyah Sayin. Another situation is, Sheyoshin B'Mitazu, he was sleeping in one bed, and Ve'emen, he says, B'Zu Ani Yoshin. He slept in another bed. And the reason is because Shema Yimtza Shem Keri, he's afraid that if he's going to sleep, if he's going to say the bed that he actually slept in, and they'll find Keri, so it'll be embarrassing for him. So therefore, in order to avoid any embarrassment, so therefore he says he slept in another bed, a bed that he really didn't sleep in, a bed that he didn't really sleep in. And obviously it was someone else didn't either sleep in it, because he's not going to want to embarrass someone else. The pshat is, no one slept there. He's saying that he slept in that bed which nobody slept in. That's a second case where he would be, the fact that he's Mishana B'Diburi doesn't make him not Naman. Shines Arech Eitzel Shimon, he's a guest by Shimon. And V'Amar, and he's saying Eitzel Ruven Ani Misarech. He didn't want to say that he's a guest by Shimon. He's saying I'm a guest by Ruven. Why? Kedei Shli Yatriach Al Zeh Shines Arech Etzli. He doesn't want to say that Shimon, is hosting me, and maybe, if you ask him, maybe he'll host you as well. So basically, he's bringing Shimon, another guest. So he's not saying, he doesn't want to say that he's being hosted by Shimon. So he's saying he's hosted by Ruven. Now Ruven, we're talking about Ruven doesn't have a guest, the Pashto. That's what is brought down, brings from the Drisha, that it's talking about he doesn't have a guest. So therefore, if you're going to ask Ruven, either he'll agree or he won't agree. Whereas Shimon was the one that obviously hosted him. So by saying that I'm being hosted by Shimon, so you're like bringing another guest to Shimon. Mashiach mentioned Ruven. So if you go to Ruven, either he'll take you in, he won't take you in. If he has a guest, that's already another issue. But Lepel, you're sending a guest to Ruven. You're trying to save Shimon from the trouble of a guest, and you're sending a guest to Ruven. So that's what the Risha says. It's talking about Shimon has already you as a guest. So therefore, for him to take another guest would be a tircha. But Ruven doesn't have a guest, so Mamela, it's not such a tircha for Ruven to take in this guest. That was the third case. So we had the Masechta, and we had the Mita. The question is where you slept, and also where are you staying? Where's your place of staying? And now he's trying to make peace between two people. And he added things, or he took away things. As he says that this person said nice things about you, or whatever. He didn't say certain things that the person actually did say. Is all of these things are izamut. So in these cases, if he does these four, so we consider him a Talmud Vasik she'enim mishana b'diburi klal. Aval bo edim sheshino b'diburi chutz midvarim elu. If we have edim that he was mishana b'diburi chutz midvarim elu, so ein machzirin le b'tfiyah sayin. So Vaistu is a regular Talmud Vasik, which enim mishana b'diburi klal is a person that b'pashtus we assume that he's enim mishana b'diburi. Doesn't have to bring edim that he's Eina Mishana B'Diburi. He's a Talmud Vasik She'eina Mishana B'Diburi. And even though we know he was Mishana B'Diburi in these four things, that doesn't make him into someone that's Mishana B'Diburi. He's a Talmud Vasik She'eina Mishana B'Diburi. In order to disqualify him from this being able to recognize something b'tfiyah sayin and be able to take it without a simon, is only Vaistois from the Lashon Ram and Bo Edim Shishina B'Diburi Chutz Midvarim Elu. In other words, you don't need Edim that he's not a Mishana Diburi. Bo Edim Sheshiri B'Diburi Chutz Midvarim Elu. So then is Ein Machzirun Le B'Tfiyah Sayin.